Good afternoon. Hope everyone is doing well. This is another webinar in our Student Supports Equity and Guided Pathways webinar series. I want to thank you all for attending, and we can jump right in. First off, we want you to ask lots of questions and share your ideas as well. You will do so by using the chat function on the Zoom to chat your question or idea. If you have a question for a panelist, just indicate the program before your question and basically type the college name and how do you with your question. If you have an approach you'd like to share, let us know in the chat as well. An example of that would be idea, your name, and then the approach that you have regarding equitable college redesign. And if you're having any tech issues, just use the following notation, tech I can't hear, and we'll address those as well. This webinar is brought to you by the team over at Career Ladders Project. You have Luis, our Senior Director, myself, Julian, Director, Shia, Director, and Christina, Program Associate. This webinar is part of a series produced by Career Ladders Project with funding from the California Community College Chancellor's Office. The mission and vision of Career Ladders Project is to promote equity-minded community college redesign. COP collaborates with community colleges and their partners to build capacity for equity-minded redesign. We research, demonstrate, and elevate promising practices. And based on our work, we offer policy recommendations to help advance student-centered reform. The purpose of these webinars, in this series of webinars, is to discuss things such as delivering equitable support services at each step of the student's journey, building on and expanding college redesign and guided pathways, supporting practitioner exchange and learning, and keeping focus on student needs, engagement, and equity. And of course, remember these videos, these slides and PowerPoints will all be shared through links after the webinar is over. So a few things to consider in terms of questions while you're listening to this webinar. Think about students. How are we engaging students to be a part of our success teams? I also want you to consider faculty and what role they can play in student success teams. And then of course, equity. And are we impacting equity with our success team efforts? So now jumping into our guest speakers, we have Dr. Patricia Avila, Byron Reaves, and we also have Armando Trujillo. Our first speaker that will start us off will be Dr. Patricia Avila, Professor of Counseling at Riverside City College. Go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Julian. Let me start off by thanking everyone at Career Ladders Project for the opportunity to be able to share with you some of the work that we've been doing at Riverside City College. I need to start off by saying that the catalyst for the work that I'm going to be sharing with you really grew out of the equity work that I've been involved in at the college. I've been at RCC for almost 24 years. And have been involved in equity work for probably about half of that time when equity started, we started calling it equity work, right? And like many of you, when the pandemic hit, one of the first concerns, that I had as a practitioner, and I know a lot of my colleagues shared the same concern, was how is this going to impact our students of color? We are 64% Latinx at RCC, and so I'm sure you can imagine the concern, was very legitimate and great. Just really wondering how is this going to impact the students, and what are we going to do to serve them? So, Christina, could you go to the next slide? So I'm going to be describing some of the work that I do under the guided pathways framework at the college. We have engagement centers. I'm not going to read the mission. I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar. This looks very familiar to a lot of you because you're all doing, many of you or all of you are doing guided pathways work at your own respective colleges. But as you'll see on the next slide, we have 5 different engagement centers. We have 5 divisions, so languages, humanities, social and behavioral sciences, career and technical education, which includes all the advanced technical trades, business information systems, and teacher preparation, fine and performing arts, which includes visual, performing, and creative arts, science, technology, engineering, and math, and then nursing, along with the health-related sciences. So my role at the college is that I'm one of the engagement center coordinators, and I coordinate the one for languages, humanities, and social and behavioral sciences, which is one of the larger ones on campus. Next slide. So our success teams, I'm sure this will look a little familiar to some of you. Our success teams consist of the center coordinator, counseling faculty. On our LHSS team, there are 7 of us, faculty leads in each of the different disciplines, educational advisors, peer mentors, and then tutors. We also have an instructional dean that is part of the success team as well. And in terms of the services that we provide in the engagement centers, again, this is going to look familiar, but counseling is one of the key services that we provide to students in the center. There's tutoring and SI sessions that happen in the center, faculty advising, faculty hold office hours in the center. We have success workshops that are offered throughout each semester. We also have financial aid support and presence in the center regularly, as well as different opportunities to collaborate across the campus. Can you go on to the next slide? Thanks. So one of the charges or goals, right, in terms of the work that we're doing in the engagement centers stems around getting faculty involved, having faculty as part of the, part of the work that we want to do is getting them to engage and to help us with the work that we're doing. And so before COVID-19, right, before the pandemic hit, faculty were absolutely getting involved. They were engaged. They were conducting what we call meet and greet sessions at the start of the semester for students to come and meet the different faculty in each discipline, as well as get information about, the major and what career opportunities exist. Those were really successful. We also had, as I mentioned, several different faculty holding office hours in the center, which was really great for students, as well as workshops. We had a whole series of workshops lined up, and we're super excited about the number of workshops and the quality of the workshops that we were going to be giving prior to COVID-19, and then the pandemic hit. And so we found ourselves, right, like all of us, we found ourselves in a position where we needed to really rethink what is this going to look like now virtually for our students. And so I have to share that this idea, really, it's going to sound very similar to maybe some of the early alert programs that many of us have on our campuses. But this idea really came after I participated in the first webinar that CLP did. And one of the vice presidents from West Hills was presenting, and he presented on how they had converted their teams to be care teams. And he talked about something very similar to an early alert. And so, I left that webinar really motivated and extremely excited and energized about the idea of doing something similar on my campus. Given the fact that we needed to figure out a way to really reach out to the students, right? Because we knew that there were going to be students that were going to be severely impacted by what was happening. And so that was one of the things that inspired me. And so what ended up happening as a result of that was we decided to do something similar. As I mentioned, we have an early alert program on our campus, but sadly, it's not as effective as it could be. And I don't know if you can relate to this, but I think part of the concern over the years has been that, you know, faculty refers students in the early alert program, but then are not really given any kind of follow-up information about what's happened and whether or not the students access the services and resources that the faculty really recommended. So I met with the dean and I pitched the idea that our success team in LHSS could work with faculty and have them provide referrals to us in terms of identifying students who weren't engaging in class, were not showing up to class sessions virtually, were not turning in assignments. Basically, we're missing, right, in action. And so what we did was the dean ended up sending out a request to the department chairs and asked that the department chairs reach out to their faculty for them to identify students so that the success team could then reach out personally and really just first and foremost demonstrate, right, a message of concern, because that's really what we started off with was, are you okay? We're concerned about you. Your professor is concerned about you. How can we help? And so within 3 days of sending out the notification to department chairs, as the lead person, I started getting, I was bombarded with emails from various department chairs. There were 4 disciplines in total that chose to participate in this. And so really it's a prototype. This isn't something that we had done before. And we're hoping that we're going to be able to really scale this up moving forward. But I want to tell you, those 4 disciplines, the faculty just kept sending me day after day lists and lists of students who were not engaged. And so we split up the list amongst the team and started calling the students. And again, message was, we're concerned about you, right? But in addition to that, we wanted to let them know about all the different resources that were available to them, including the CARES Act monies, including the option to do pass, no pass for their classes if they felt like they were struggling, including an emergency withdrawal. In many, many cases, the feedback that we got from the students that we were able to speak with was that they were overwhelmed by the whole entire situation. Many of them had to increase or even double the number of hours they were working, etc. Some students shared the fact that they were just extremely depressed and just could not find the motivation to engage in their schoolwork. You know, I talked to students who didn't have access to the technology, right? You would think in this day and age that the digital divide wouldn't be as prevalent as it still is. We have students on our campus that were trying to do work from their phones. And again, I'm sure some of this resonates with a lot of you, because I don't think this is just specific to Riverside, but these are the stories that we heard from students. So we spoke to so many of them, and I'm hoping that we were able to really make a difference. If you'll go to the next slide. So some of the lessons learned, Julian had asked me to make sure that I talked about this. So one of the things that I would say, if you're thinking about doing something similar to this, or if you're already doing it, is to start earlier and to pivot intentionally. I have always said that if we're really gonna make a difference, right? If we're really gonna be intentional and we're going to intervene on behalf of the students, we really need to have a plan early on. We need to really know what it is that we want to do and have that plan in place so that we can execute it. Doing this was, I think, a really tremendous effort, and it was a start, but it should have started much earlier, because I don't think, I think most people would agree we knew this was going to be impactful on students, the whole situation. So I think being prepared right early on and getting to the students earlier would have helped a lot more. Closing the loop. And what do I mean by this? So faculty were very eager and very hungry to hear what had happened, right? So we started notifying the faculty of the outcome of those conversations, and faculty just outpoured their gratitude and you know, for us letting them know, because they were concerned and they wanted to know what was going on with the students. So in being able to close that loop and update the faculty on the outcome of those calls and what was happening with the students was really critical. And then another lesson that we learned, and again, was, you know, that it takes more than one call, right? We need to make sure that we're making multiple efforts and attempts to calling our students, and, you know, looking at the times of the day that we're calling. So for a lot of students, the ones that I was able to reach, you know, calling in the evening made a lot more sense because a lot of them were home and they could take the calls. And then tracking the data. So, you know, one of the things that we really were hoping to be able to share with others is, you know, how many of the students that we were able to reach actually followed through on the recommendations, because many of them indicated that that's what they were planning on doing. But given the circumstances at our college right now and, you know, the overwhelming amount of work that the limited staffing has, we were not able, they just don't have the capacity to be able to help us track that data right now. So I would venture to say this was one of the lessons learned, and I would encourage you to consider, if you're going to do anything similar to this, or anytime you're doing any interventions with students, I think tracking the data is really important. So that's basically it for me.
Perfect. And I think we have time for just one quick question for now, Patricia. And the question is, are the coordinators for each engagement center faculty, classified staff, or a mix? And if they're faculty, are they counseling or instructional faculty?
So that's a good question. So at Riverside City College, all of the engagement center coordinators are faculty, and they're full-time tenured faculty. Or tenure track faculty, and they're not all counselors. For this year, two of us, I have to think for a minute, two of us are counseling faculty. The rest are instructional.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So now I want to introduce our next guest speaker. His name is Byron Reaves, EOPNS counselor at Santa Rosa Junior College. Take it away, Byron.
Thanks, Julian. Hi, everyone. I hope you all are enjoying your quarantine as much as you can. As you can see, I've engaged in growing an afro since quarantine. You can go to the next slide. So I want to introduce the student success team at the Santa Rosa Junior College, particularly the program at the Petaluma campus. This idea is kind of different from what you've seen around the state. Our idea of the success team was focused really, really much on a peer-to-peer model, really engaging peer-to-peer, looking at all the outcomes all the great outcomes nationwide around peer-to-peer mentors and connections. And so our student success team really was built around that, inspired by some work from the University of Connecticut, where I'm from, and they had basically a whole academic center devoted to and ran by students. And so we inspired by that, my dean, Matthew Long, brought me here to run this amazing program. And so I just want to tell you a little bit about it. Our college was receiving around 1,200 to 1,300 new students every semester, and we really wanted to focus on that first year success. And so we decided that hired under the SSSP mandate is that we needed to mobilize the messaging from the college in a way that students are going to respond. And so the steps to success were super important. The funding was based off getting students through assessment, orientation, and then ed plan, abbreviated and comprehensive. And we were losing students along the way. Like much of you probably were, we were losing students at every point. And much more than these transactional experiences, we wanted to create a relational experience for the students. We felt that the more the students are connected, the more they'll trust the process and why these offices and why these steps and activities are important. You can go to the next slide. And so we came up with these pillars inspired by the work from our P group, Success Redefined, and we out of that emerged Welcome, Guide, and Engage for us. And again, our mission was to guide students through the steps of success. We wanted to make sure all those students we were losing, that we were grabbing them through the cracks. Help troubleshoot any roadblocks to success and assist with early alert intervention, along with connecting students to campus activities and resources. That's how we kind of just thought about what we wanted to do. And again, the goals were to get the students to the counselor's office and to the offices that were going to be helpful to students. But we knew that there were larger goals. Course retention, course success, addressing equity gaps, and persistence and completion. We knew we can affect that if we just got the student through the door and we kind of gave them some support through their first year, but mainly their first semester. And so Welcome, Guide, and Engage became our mantra. And we were intentional. We wanted to have intentional activities that supported each one of these pillars. And so as you can see, I won't go through all of them, but I'll highlight some of the most important activities out of these 3 pillars. So from Welcome, the welcome email, right when the student applied and they said they were coming here, we had one of our peer-to-peer coaches reach out to the students and say, hey, welcome. And that was super important. And from that, we talked about having a day, which most people have, to welcome all these students back on a campus, returning and new students. And so out of that welcome day was super important. It was a program designed to have a space for students to make a connection with the agent of the college, which we hired to be peer coaches. And so these are student workers that were 3rd or 4th year students who were ready, have been through the systems, they knew the campus systems, they knew all the important offices that folks needed to be connected to. And so we hired them for their experience and their voice, along with knowing that they knew the past, they knew the pitfalls. And so connecting them early and often, so through the email, through the phone call, but then at Welcome Day, making that connection was super vital, super important. And one of the staples of our program is the student success coaching. It's at the top of Guide. And under coaching is where we find the magic. Our peer coaches help students create SMART goals. Okay, and so they're helping students with all the soft skills that first year students and returning students are really, really in need of and need that extra support. And so coaching, we have action plans that each student walks through that include SMART goals, along with a list of different activities and different success tips that might help a student. A student can look at a form and say, that's what I have bad time management, I need help with that. And our coaches, coordinated by me, are designed to help them through that particular barrier, right? And again, we keep the content of all of our meetings very light and very student-centered, along with keeping the idea of the peer-to-peer connection, right? So we didn't have to fight whether our coaches were counselors or advisors, but everything was done under the peer-to-peer spirit. Along with that, we grew into some of our faculty said, we have students that we want to see this first year, the student success team, and they're first year students and they need this extra support. And so through kind of an email early alert system, and then we start to pilot Starfish, we started receiving referrals from faculty who thought that our students, our peer coaches, could have a large and a successful effect on whatever barrier our students were facing. And then engage. Our student coaches researched along with me, take some best practices nationwide, and then take their own experience, really hone into what's happening in Santa Rosa and the surrounding counties to design workshops around time management, procrastination, study skills, self-care. And all of these were designed with a peer's voice in mind, but moderated by me and some other staff that we had working with the student success teams. Next slide, please. And so here was some of the early data. Actually, this is a whole collection of data. It was 2016 and 2017, when we first ran our outcomes, we noticed something. We noticed that the students that were a part of our program were persisting at a higher rate than other students. And we also realized we were doing the work with equity as well. And so the top left bar chart, you'll see that just within Hispanic students that were served through our program, we outperformed the district by a considerable amount, 15%, remarkable numbers. And so we just kept moving on that work. In 17, it really drove just in general, our fall to spring persistence rates were 88% versus 65%. So we were really doing the work. It was really working. Not to mention what the chart doesn't see is that all of our students were matriculated. Most of them, about 95% were fully matriculated, 5% partial. And you'll see at the top, in 2018 and 19, last year, our students were fully matriculated. We had no students, if you look at all coach, we had no students that weren't matriculated. So we were doing the triple SP work as well as continuing this fall to spring retention and persistence. We were really a student that came and got connected and got that extra support. We really seen the difference. Peer coaches, they're all under the guise of me or formerly me. But so they have this direct connection to professional staff along with our dean. And so we're constantly training, we're constantly retooling all of our tools we use to help students. We touch all first-year students at least one time. So through an email, a text, or a phone, or a coaching meeting. We have a system that has high touch, low touch, mid touch. And so we look at that system, and if the students we consider to be high touch, i.e. like a first generation student or African American student, we try to touch them 2 to 3 times a semester. We want to be there for the students that need us the most. And so from the 16-17 data and the 17-18 data, we actually applied and won an award from the Chancellor's office for innovation. We got an innovation award. So you can go to the next slide. And so with the award, we were able to scale up our program. And so these pictures you're looking at, you'll see the first picture is the first time we ran the program in 2016. The next picture is 17. And then you get to see what happened as we started to grow. As folks around the college, the energy around the college started to see that it was really moving the needle for student success, our numbers grew. And so we started to grow as well, and our ideas started to grow. And so now we have something we call houses. And houses are designed around whatever you have interest in, and then being in that circle around folks that have interest too. And so it's kind of replicating what the peer coaches are, but you're allowing first-year students to be around folks that have the same interests as themselves. And so we received the $1.6 million. It fueled our larger campus, the Santa Rosa campus, to start their student success team program. And it actually grew and evolved to a much larger and really robust program. So now that we have our Welcome Center that's completely ran by by student success coaches, that program has a coordinator and a director, but it really, really hones in that first year experience. It allows them, and I love the name of it, Connect Center, because it's not only just welcoming, it's having students have viable connections on campus from the start. right from application. And then also we grew into having engagement coaches that really handled the second year and third year students who might need that support as well. In 2019, and you'll hear me talk about the training, how important that is we went with NASPA certified peer educator training, and the results have been awesome. Our students are now certified nationally to be peer educators, so they take that on to their 4-year. So our student workers get a lot out of this program, not only giving back and helping students through the systems that they've been through, but also receiving and being connected to a national network along with a host of different administrators and faculty from the college. Next slide. So some lessons learned. Running this program, and what I will say is that this is an hour-long presentation smushed in 10 minutes, so there's a lot of parts that I probably missed. But training, and more training. You cannot train your peer mentors or your navigators. I know it's different flavors at different colleges, but for our coaches, you have to train. So the program we ran was training every Friday. We had different training every Friday. And we also connected with our First Stop Center, our counselors, our faculty, and they all came and did their own training with our coaches. And so this was super important. It was important to draw that line, and for departments and offices to draw that line with our coaches to say, here's where you stop. And so I can do all the training I want. We can have the CPE, the Certified Peer Educator training, do the training, but really hear from the practitioners that were doing the work was super important. And our students having that connection and knowing where to stop. So we work well with our counselors and with our faculty to make sure we knew that when we heard something in the coaching meeting that these peers can't handle that and they need to kick it to the professionals. We also learned that we have to be able to pivot. I think the programs change every year. We've always changing. I had a really, really supportive dean who really supported. You have to change with the times. Unfortunately, in Sonoma County, we've had 2 fire seasons, now COVID. And so the program, as you create it, you cannot be stale. You got to be able to pivot all the time and often. And so I think that's what we've been able to do. And an example of that is now through this COVID and taking things remotely, our coaches still have that amazing connection because they're all online anyway, through Instagram, through all these different social media platforms. But it's important to continue to have that high touch, high tech approach, right? And so we really we reach out to our students through text messages, through calls, and we really try to make sure that we're adherent and changing even the curriculum to our workshops to make sure, hey, we probably need to help students figure out Canvas better now or Zoom as everything went remote over the last summer. So we're really, really, you really have to have the space to always pivot and to always be changing. And then lastly is the connection to faculty. I can say the Petaluma campus, our faculty were amazing. Once they seen the program work, our referrals were often. And we had some champion faculty who are really, really excited about the program and really seeing the results that when a student came back to their classroom after they met with the student success team, is really super important that they seen the change, that the student went from not doing something to actually doing it. And it was always full circle. So around that closing the loop, the action of seeing the student change their behaviors really, really had a great effect on our faculty. And that is it for me.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you so much, Byron. I think for the sake of time, we're going to go on to our next speaker, but we definitely have some questions for you towards the end. Our next speaker is going to be Armando Trujillo, Educational Advisor for Veterans at Bakersfield College. Take it away, Armando.
Hello, everyone. Man, the program sounds huge and definitely a lot of work. I've been at BC for a little over 4.5 years, working with veterans, a place I never thought I'd be at. I was with the VA before. I'm a veteran myself. Started my education maybe about uh, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, due to changes in life, right? Just like we're experiencing right now. So when I started at BC, I was actually in the same spot that these students are coming into, 4 years prior. And as a veteran, knowing the structure change, right? From a military environment to civilian world, and how do I navigate this? All we want is for someone to tell us how to do it. So next slide. So with that in mind, that's what I brought to the campus. First question was, where are my veterans? How do I find out? There was no veteran services in per se. There wasn't a center. There was a little bit of what they call a lounge, a little designated area where they could hang out. But the important stuff was, how do I find out? Find them, communicate with them. Just to let them know about the update form, or, this changed to a VA benefit, and there was no really a good answer. So that was something I worked on in the beginning, was let's look at how we identify them, or how they identify themselves, and then we could start to work with that group. Once we were able to do that, somewhat, even prior to that though, we could create I was the outreach worker for the VA. So in my mind, I was still looking for these veterans, because they were not, I couldn't go meet with them at the high school at a certain time and prep them to come over to DC. So it was all about outreach still, job fairs, anywhere I could go, I was able to get out there and still try to look for them. So we had flyers and postcards and information. Veterans don't always know about their VA benefits as well. So to be able to explain both education questions, options, in addition to their VA benefits, it was in the right spot for that. So getting into as far as how to start working with these students, another thing we fell into, or I found out, was a CCC apply report. There's I think like 7 different codes that somebody could indicate some sort of connection to military affiliated. So what we did is we started running the CCC apply reports. At one point I started hiring VA work studies, and this was the beginning of my success team. So as an advisor in a different area than the main counseling, sitting in a room full of student veterans, it was me, my work studies that I eventually hired, and then my virtual or mental, I guess, success team across campus. I had to go find out, who's over here in admissions, who do I need to know over here? Okay, who do I need to know in financial aid and everywhere else? And who else is a veteran on campus as far as faculty or other staff? I got hired by one, or, a gentleman who's a history professor, a Navy corpsman. He was the vet club advisor. So he had, worked on this position for some time, and that's the job I'm in right now. So the veterans there were not necessarily properly advised when it came to VA benefits. Education, hey, the general counselors and advisors doing great, but it was always a little bit different when it comes to the VA. So our numbers have increased since, because we're able to reach out on these CCC apply reports and find out, hey, we've seen that you applied, but you don't have a BC ID number. What happened here? Oh, well, or I was waiting for someone to call me. When there's an error in the CCC report and not our application process, where they'll complete the CCC apply based off from your website, correct? And then they don't get the activation link. So this student who went to your site applies and then doesn't hear anything. So they're waiting for something. And we learned that there's this little pool that they sit in because they didn't get the activation link to go back to BC's site and continue the process. So once I learned that out, was looking into those students. Hey, how can we help you? We've seen that you applied, let's go on from here. So we are the initial onboarding in the Veterans Resource Center, again, which includes me and some student workers. I've been fortunate to have a director a year ago, and then now I have a manager since January. And prior to that, there was just me and the students and our workers. It was a good dynamics, a great time to build rapport with the students as they come in, to build that relationship, to help use technology. We use Starfish to start to create these educational plans. I make my own on PDF for VA purposes, which really lays out for the student. I go through it all. And that's, I guess I'm very fortunate. Our students are very fortunate that the VA has certain requirements. So what that does is it keeps them on track for sure. They cannot receive payment for a class that is not on their education plan. So I kind of have that built in. I need to go check with Armando before I veer off the path here. So this is all explained during this onboarding process. And I've seen students come in and just with a checklist to either start the process with and also follow up with after our appointment. That was a huge thing. There's so many, I mean, we all understand all the different A through Z steps that these students have to do, but we expect them to know it. And again, my students didn't have a high school orientation or anything. So what we tagged with the Bridge program, and we've had 2 vet bridge programs where we modify, or well, actually the Bridge to BC program modified their program and for our veterans. So it was pretty cool because now we had a group of brand new students in one room. We're all veterans, sitting in similar groups per pathway. And we also now know who our faculty and champions on campus that were either veterans themselves or just want to help. And so they all represented at those tables as well. So they were able to meet faculty. And that was a great 2 vet bridges. And so what I've had to do since we shut down was do a virtual orientation workshop bridge. I won't call it bridge because it's not our program, but I've had to do those types of a little bit of additional onboarding. Let's see, so that's our bringing them in. This is all part of the success though. I've had students say, man, I might have been here years ago before I left to the military and I had no clue. I don't know what to do. And that's what they still say when they come in to see me. Hey man, I got out 2 days ago. What do I do? Come on in. And our student workers now are doing the same thing. Before I'd had to stop talking to a student and say, poke my head around the partition and say, okay, yeah, you need to go do this first, that first, and then come back. And so to be able to have a team now and train them and with intention and say, look, this is who we're serving. Remember when you got here the first day, and we've had some good success with our workers being passionate, they're passionate, they're definitely their brothers and sisters, and then empathetic to all these changes, right? So when we just had a brand new, almost 5,000 square foot building built due to Measure J funds. And we just moved in November. So we were barely breaking it in when this happened. But the space, the camaraderie, the community that's created, the additional tutoring. So we all started to offer tutoring internally using the grants that came from California recently for the VRCs. So we actually hired, due to AB 705, this is when I asked the first director, I said, look, I'm moving all these veterans into college level math and English who've been gone for at least 4 years, and not longer, mostly longer. I said, we need to have tutoring in here for this and that. And he did what he had to do with that funds. And that was a huge element of their success since fall of 19. The students are in there, you know, and they know it's necessary. And this all comes through, again, sitting in an area, having a dedicated advisor, getting this support. Anytime I need to ask a question, I don't get to bounce around, right? We have a central center where we're going to help them get adjusted, and then we can work on their development. So you can skip to the next slide. Let's see what we got. So now that we've developed a little bit more, we have data coaches. So we have a lot of different tools to use to track data that's live. Some of it is, you know, from last semester, you know, historical information. Now we have some live software, and we're able to do a lot more with it. So we're just having to look at what we want to do with it and how can it help. So with that, there's a lot of ways to look at data, so which is awesome. Now, the same program that we use too is another one. Again, I mentioned earlier, Starfish. So now we're introducing this to the students. I am in my area a little more than before, now that we've kind of worked out, you know, the little bit of the bugs. And in that network, for the most part, all they know is me right now until they start their classes, and then they meet a professor. But with Starfish, as soon as they register for classes, as soon as they log into Starfish and click their My Success Network, it'll list all their professors there, the pathways that they fall under, the counselors and advisors that are connected to that. And that's been an awesome change because it shows students someone else to reach out to for specific questions. I really talk to them, you know, about all the majors for sure, but they come back to me for the VA piece. That's the important part for them. So, but I have to be aware of everything that's going on for the most part, as much as I can. So with the current modality that we're working in, right, we have the daily counseling meetings, which we never had while we were on campus. We got to work, you know, everybody does their thing like everywhere else, but right now we made it a thing through Zoom. Every morning we log in at 7 and we start our day off there with any questions, any recent updates from last night, any issues that might have happened. And as far as staff-wise, I felt on an island for a long time. Now I'm connected. Now I have more resources. And this has removed a lot of barriers for everyone because what people might have kept in a silo here and there, this has really removed that in a sense. And so that has been, that's very helpful. As part of the team, I'm sorry. So that's all the pathways are represented in that meeting as well. So that's where I stay abreast of all those changes too. And I share out with as well so that they understand what changes are happening. We also bring in the TAP program, California Department of Veteran Affairs. That's a holistic approach. Next slide. And so then last few things we learned on what we need to do at what time. Here's a timeline that kind of says what you do for a first year semester, a second year semester in January. It's going to be a different message. So it kind of gives you a little bit of a little workflow that we created to say what we need to do. We also use another case management is a third unit coining ceremony. That's huge for veterans, a coining ceremony. I bring them in at 30 units. Hey, you're halfway there. When you start looking at graduation and transfer, let's have a seat and make sure, because it went by fast, right? And they're like, yes. So it's another way to touch bases. And this is just one of those main milestones. but we're constantly communicating throughout the semester for different opportunities. Thank you.
That was excellent, Armando. Thank you so much. Now, I'd like to take this last few minutes that we have to get in some of the questions that have been coming up all throughout the webinar. I think at this point, let's go ahead and backtrack to Patricia, because we had a question that came in for you earlier. And it is, how is RCC compensating their faculties, the faculties who are in charge of the engagement centers? Is it with a reassigned time or stipend?
So each of the engagement center coordinators is given 40% reassigned time to do the work currently. So no stipend. We're in the process of hearing back from our leadership on campus regarding summer, because as you know, faculty are not, that's not part of their contract. So we're looking at figuring out whether or not we're going to get a stipend in the summer to do planning. But for the academic year, we're given 40% reassigned time.
Perfect. And then one more question for you, Patricia. It's in regards to the capacity in following up with all these referrals. With all the referrals coming in, how do you evolve this approach as they continue to increase and throughout the summer and the upcoming fall?
So I'm going to be quite honest with you. I haven't figured that part out. You know, this was sort of, it was an organic effort that kind of just happened, right? I mean, out of a desire to really want to help. What we have agreed to, though, in terms of the success team, is we all have agreed that we are going to continue to do this work. So we have to figure out how we're going to, you know, divide up the list, and then how we can start to engage some of the other ed advisors that are part of the success team, and then just look at you know, ways of addressing it. But I wish I had a concrete answer for you. We're still figuring it out.
Excellent. Thank you, Patricia. And then moving on to Byron, I've got a couple questions for you as well. One practical question is, how do you pay for peer coaches?
So originally we were funded by the SSSP funding, and then we got the Innovation Award. So we paid for students through the Innovation Award. And as that grant expires, we will pay for students under student success coaches under the C budget.
Excellent. And then another follow-up question to that is, with such a great model, have you ever interviewed the student success coaches to see how serving in this role impacts their success? Is there any data on that?
Yes, there is. Am I 100% familiar with it? No, I can't tell you exact numbers. What I can tell you is right now, and I could be lying as of this semester because I just left that role, but we had 100% graduation rate and transfer rate. So all of our coaches, especially those 4 coaches, actually just now graduated UCLA and Berkeley right now. So they came back home, and one is graduating next summer. And all of our students are currently in their 4-year university, and some of them have attained their jobs already. So I don't have those numbers in front of me though, but if you would like to see those numbers, I think we ran them last year, so I can send you those.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Byron. And then I also have a question for you, Armando, that came in. It sounds like you've built such a sense of community. How are you continuing to build that sense of community now that you're not physically there and you're operating remotely?
So we've done a lot of messaging, I sent a video out recently that we still have a virtual VRC up and running. So all the VA work studies that we had hired are still working around the clock right now, or during our operating hours, to be able to answer that call. A student can jump into a Zoom meeting that they're sitting in right now waiting for someone to pop in, like we did in the actual VRC. And they can jump in and say, hey, I need an appointment. With who, Armando or tutor? Tutor, okay, here's a breakout room, boom, there you go. The tutors are there. And then I'm in the same boat. I'm just behind the door, right? Hey, appointment ding. I log in, I see them. And we've expressed that in different ways to try to keep that. What we found out is they just missed that place. And so I also had something I call School Circle, where I just open it up on Thursday and I say, hey, I'm here. And I still got to get that going. It was right towards the end of finals, so I'll pick that up here again. But it's just constant communication with them.
And how do you think this COVID-19 will impact veteran enrollments going forward?
There's been some questions again because they know their benefits. So if strictly online, they would get a lower rate of payment. So VA legislator, they approved to pay the veterans that the same amount that they would get, even if, so it's kind of hard. They would get the same amount they were getting until December 2020, no matter, even if all their courses are online, which would normally be only $850. So they're losing half of it, but so we had to share that information once it came out. As soon as it came out, hey, you still will get paid. And then we also have our student workers making those calls right now too. Hey, we've seen that you're not registered for summer and fall right now. You were current spring term semester. What's going on? Well, am I going to get paid by VA? Yes. So then we've done those phone bank calls too.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to thank all of our panelists, and I think we're all appreciative as an audience that they were able to be guest speakers today and share all of this great information. I want to invite you all to join our Basecamp community of practices, the California Counseling Network. If you would like to sign up, we would certainly love that, and we put a link in the chat to be able to inquire about that. We also have some resources that we want you to pay attention to. The Chancellor's Office has their COVID-19 webpage, the Vision Resource Center, and then of course today's resources will all be emailed to the participants and posted at the Vision Resource Center and on the CLP website as well. An upcoming webinar is going to be Thursday, June 4th and 18th from 10 to 11 a.m. The topic will be problem solving, moving dual enrollment online. And if you missed our past webinar in this series, it was virtual onboarding. And you can click the link which will send you the PowerPoint to be able to access those as well. And any questions, please feel free to email Christina and we will get those answered. Other than that, I would like to thank you all for joining Career Ladders Project during this webinar in this series. Thank you so much.